All right, everybody, welcome to the podcast. A good buddy of mine here named Paul. How are you doing today, Paul?
I'm doing good. How about you, Joe?
It's another day in paradise. It's my favorite phrase. Yeah, I haven't seen you in, God, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years since you moved down to yonder.
Well, yeah, I mean, COVID hit in 2020 and kind of shut Lodge down. So there was nothing going on that. And then in 2022, we moved to, the deep South Louisiana. We're about 45 minutes from New Orleans. So yeah, it's been quite a while. I mean, we were seeing each other all the time there at Lodge for the longest time.
Oh God, yeah, for almost a little over a decade.
Yeah, it's long time.
So question: since you lived down there in New Orleans, you guys just had that hurricane last year, correct?
Yeah, we had a couple last year.
No, I see in the news all the time about the folks in North Carolina not getting the help and stuff they need. Like, what's the difference between like there and what you guys go through? Because I know New Orleans gets them fairly regularly. I don't think North Carolina gets hit to that level on a normal basis.
I can say I've never personally had to deal with that. But from what I understand, is there was a lot of misunderstanding with that, and like that payment, what was it, like $750 they're talking about, or something like that? I don't remember the exact number. That was just a one-time payment to help them get necessities that they need, and the government was, still going to come in and provide aid for them. They took that $750 number and kind of ran with it, But
I think in a situation like that, the government should. I don't know. I know on military bases they have like grocery stores, commissaries type of things. It feels like in that situation, the government should be like partnered with some of the bigger chains, like on the Walmart, your Kroger's, whatever they would have down that part of the world. To in a situation like that, the government essentially foots the bill to get people food from those places and whatever else the government can provide, or having some form of MREs ready with, a bunch of water to go with them. I think things of that nature would probably go a whole lot further to making people feel better and securing their well-being than $750.
That they will donate, and they have trailers go out and cook meals for the communities that were the hardest hit and things of that nature. There is definitely a sense of community after you have disasters like that.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, that's the things that I don't get. Part of like why I did this podcast meeting in the middle, right? I think Trump had a lot of reasons to criticize certain things, but also I think that things that like what the grocery stores are doing, not just a celebrity, but like what a lot of your businesses are doing, kind of like coming into focus and helping people, should be something that I think is talked about more, and mainly more of a focus, just as much as, hey, people aren't getting what they need, but this is what they are doing, rather than it being back page news.
Right. And there was a lot of restaurants that did the same thing, like McDonald's, Raising Cane's. They sent all of their like big, a lot of them have like tractor trailer kitchens that they sent down and were feeding them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's a couple of mobile hospitals that got deployed. A lot of stuff that don't make national news for some reason. It just gets pushed to the back, which is sad, because them are the ones that are really doing the grunt work and the groundwork, to bring the affected people the relief that they need.
Yeah, and it's just it's something that's not talked about. We only ever hear about the negative.
That's it. That's it.
And I think that's part of the bigger problem across the board, no matter which side of the aisle you want to put yourself on, or if you're a Democrat, everything Trump does is bad. If you're a, Republican, anything that any Democrat does is bad. And, and that's so counterproductive to just functioning in life.
It is, and people get so. I'm one. I can tell you from prior experience is I used to be heavily involved in politics, and after a while, you just get to the point where you have to realize that neither party really has your best interest, at heart. Like they all have, each party has their own agenda,
Yes.
and the American people as a whole need to realize that, and we need to be, you know, Americans. Like it don't matter your ethnicity, your background, your political affiliation, anything like that. We need to stick together and be who we are, and that's just Americans.
No, and I think that's something that in our fraternity that they've done a really good job of is, for instance, one of our good friends, Jeff. Not everybody's a fan of him, but we respect him as a man. We respect
Absolutely.
we respect a lot of what he had done for a long time. Just sometimes when you've done something for so long, it kind of goes to your head. We're all guilty of it. But the man did teach me a lot. But when everything had to happen the way it had to happen, obviously create a little bit of a tension slash barrier, however you want to, you know, cut the cheesecake there. But, while I'm thinking of that, we're kind of talking about, just people getting along, yada, yada, yada. Um, I was reading not that long ago, really, that Vietnam is in negotiations with the White House right now to drop the tariffs or reduce them significantly. And so on that news, Nike's stock has jumped. And the reason why I bring that up is, I'm very big about, hey, let's be pro American, this, that, the other thing. But sometimes I think people forget that some of the goods and luxury goods that we're able to buy at a reasonable price are because they're made in countries like China, Vietnam,
Absolutely.
where instead of the guy making $17 an hour, which we would consider not that good of money, they're making $1 an hour or whatever it is there. And, they produce the same shoe and they can turn around and sell it here for 120, $200 for just a pair of Nikes. And we all pay it. And it's made with, slave labor. And
Think
that's,
about what a markup there is. That they're paying somebody in their country where, if it's China, Vietnam, Malaysia, wherever, um, to manufacture that, the goods that they use to manufacture the product, the transportation costs to get it, from one port to the next on a container ship, and then from the container ship to a distribution center, from a distribution center to the end store, and what they're selling it at, and they're still making a huge profit on it. So that just shows you how little that they're actually paying their people to manufacture this stuff.
yeah. And it's crazy. And then you got the folks who are, pro union, things of that nature. And I'm not anti union, pro union. I'm just using as context, right? How
I
can
can
you,
I
how
can
can we,
touch on that because I've been both.
okay. Yeah. I just, like, how can we be pro union in certain parts of the country and still buy something that comes from a market where it's chances are it may be a 10-year-old kid being forced to do that just to buy bread for his house?
Well, I tell you what, I was a union guy for 16, almost 17 years. And the unions are not what they were, like a lot of businesses and industries, they're not what they were when they were formed. They are definitely not for the better of the people. A lot of the union representatives are unfortunately looking to, grow their own pockets. Um, saw that firsthand. the company that I work for now is some of us are union and some of us aren't union. It depends on the location and the region. You know,
Yeah.
historically the North is more, you know, automotive and unionized, where the South is not. And I can tell you from my personal experience, we were union at one point where I work now, and when our contract was up, we voted to get rid of the union.
Wow. That
And
doesn't happen very often.
no, it does not. Um, our union rep showed up to contract negotiations in pajamas bottoms. So that to us spoke volumes that he didn't have our best interest. When you show up to something like that in you know, they were actually like Homer Simpson pajama bottoms. So how do you take something like that serious? So we voted to get rid of the union at our location, and I would say that was probably the best decision we made to get rid of the union. Because once we got rid of the union, we got all of the benefits that the company actually offered, like profit sharing, you know,
Oh yeah.
the extra vacation days that the company gives, you know, to just regular employees. You know, we just call them floating holidays or PTO days. So we thought that we were afforded more benefits by getting rid of the union, and we actually got a bigger pay raise by getting rid of the union, which,
Wow.
yeah, which you don't really hear of often, but it was in our best interest to get rid of them.
I would not have imagined that. I mean, that's just that is like such the minority of what would happen, you know. And I still think in some instances, like I think in things like mining, you know, certain things, I think it's probably pretty important that you have a union because
Absolutely.
to you know rely on. And I'm not knocking OSHA, right? But we all know how slow the government can be sometimes, or how things can go bad. You know, I think in a lot of situations like that, you do need a group to kind of be the check and balance.
Oh, something as dangerous as mining? Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, I think that unions do have a place, you know, in certain areas of certain industries. You know, they like when you hear company, hey, we're turning record profits and da da da, and then you also hear, you know, when they go for a wage negotiation, we don't have any money. What?
And
But you,
I saw that firsthand working for a company for almost 17 years that was a union. And being that they were a private company, they didn't have to technically open their books to the union because they were a family owned private we were a large scale private business though. But you know, people think the union and they think, oh, you can't get fired, and you know your job's, you know, safe 100% of the time. And if there's an issue, you file a grievance. And I can tell you that is the farthest from the truth from what I saw. We had this business agent who would come in and he'd walk right to the owner's office at contract negotiations, you know, and you'd see envelopes being changed hands, and you know, everyone knows what was in that envelope. Um, you know, and if I saw multiple people get fired, and you know, somebody file a grievance, and union would be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, you can't file a grievance on that." Like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be the union representing your people, and you're telling us we can't file a grievance because the company don't want us to. Like, that makes absolutely no sense.
yeah, that makes zero sense. Like, wow. Well, I'm thinking of unions. It's got me on the business thinking, right? And I'm sure you use TikTok. I mean, I think almost everybody does, or you at least, you know, have it or view it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
whichever.
yeah.
So I guess they extended TikTok's like ban or whatever, give more time to buy it by 75 days.
I,
Now
I saw
here's
that. today.
Yeah, so here's some news from the BBC.com. Apparently, Trump has said that the U.S. could offer a deal where China agrees to approve a TikTok sale in exchange for relief from U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports. So now here's some of the companies that are looking to buy it. Amazon has put up an offer. Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison, billionaire Frank McCourt, uh, Canadian businessman Kevin O'Leary, Alexis Ohanian, who co-founded Reddit. You got Jimmy Donaldson, aka Mr. Beast, Tim Stokely, the British co-founder of OnlyFans, computer giant Microsoft with private equity firm Blackstone, Andreessen Horowitz and search engine Perplexity AI are also reporting in the running for buying it as well. I believe there is one more. No, there's not. That's the last one they had listed. Um, there's where ByteDance, I guess, is. Oh, that ByteDance is the other one where it would keep ownership of TikTok's algorithm, but lease it to a new entity operating the video sharing app within the U.S. So I don't know how that would work if we're not wanting the Chinese government involved in it. How can you do any kind of deal with ByteDance? I believe that's the company who owns it. So that part doesn't make sense. But I'm glad there's at least enough wealthy companies out there willing to, foot the money on. Now the question is going to be is if one of them buy it, what ends up happening with the algorithm? Because the algorithm is what's made it possible for so many people to open up businesses on there and flourish. So
Absolutely.
if that changes, how does that change? I think they said there's like 10 million businesses on there that average like 100 something $1 billion a year in economic impact. So it's a lot of money.
A ton.
And so if you change the algorithm, what happens to some of those people? Because no matter what, when you change something, someone gets left behind. That's just the nature of change.
Absolutely. My thoughts on that is I think Amazon really wants TikTok for the TikTok shop is my personal
Oh yeah.
beliefs. Because there is
I always forget about the TikTok shop.
there is a ton of stuff on the TikTok shop that is for sale. And I'll tell you, I bought a few things off the TikTok shop. I bought a. Have you seen that Vevor, the Vevor tool brand that they always advertise on there? And it's on Amazon as well now. They got home appliances, they got tools, pretty much anything that you could think of. And it's a Chinese manufacturer that manufactures it. And I had a TikTok shop coupon for like 30% off. I got an 8-piece player set that's got vice grips, slip joint players, diagonal cutters, anything pretty much that you could think of. It was regular like $30. Cut it on sale, free shipping. I think I wound up paying like $19 for it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and we bought a sheet set, like a 600 count um, silk sheet set off of the TikTok shop, and Amazon delivered it to us.
Wow.
So some of the TikTok shop is utilizing Amazon as a drop shipper.
Wow. I did not know that. While we're reading about the TikTok, there's according to BBC, some of the platforms they're suggesting are Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts could see a big jump. Amazon's Twitch could. Other Chinese-owned platforms, I guess, could see a boost. So if people are worried about Chinese, you probably would not want to go with a Red Note, as apparently that is another Chinese-owned platform. I I did not. I've never used Red Note, but apparently that is the case according to the BBC. And the BBC is usually pretty. They're not. They generally don't report outright lies.
Right. Yeah. Red Note. I only heard of Red Note like the day before TikTok was like officially shut down. For like what 20 some hours.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, "Oh, find me on Red Note." I didn't download it talked to a couple people that did download it, and they said they wound up downloading it and deleting it because the terms of use were in like Mandarin or something like that, and they had no idea what they were agreeing to. So
Oh
they,
yeah. You can't do that.
yeah. If it's not, if you can't like read it and skim through it, like I don't, you know, you could be signing up for God knows what. So
Donating your organs.
right, and you know, you agree to it.
Yeah, and that's crazy. And when I was looking up the TikTok stuff, kind of switching, but not. I know like we've both talked about how like I mean maybe down there in the south EVs might be more practical because the weather's a lot steadier, and up here in the north, when it gets cold, it cuts down on your battery life. But I
They
read
don't want
this,
anything to. They don't want anything to do with electric vehicles down here.
but that's the odd part is down there is probably like in terms of as a system, EVs would work better in the south than up here. Just because you'd be able to get a little bit more consistency on your battery, and I get why a lot of people are against it because I think that it's a fool's errand myself as well. But
Especially when you have the storms that we have down here that can knock your power out for days, weeks, or who knows how long. You know, so
oh yeah,
you'd have no way to charge your vehicle.
right. Well, so one big thing that when we talk about those and things like TikTok, right? They talk about what do you and what do you do with all these batteries? For even some of the data centers that use like battery backups and same thing that the electric cars use. Well, apparently there is a company. Their name is Altilium, I guess maybe is how you pronounce it.
I've
But
heard
they
of that name before.
yes, they've apparently have figured out a way to recycle batteries. Let me just try to figure out where they this apparently they've come up with a solvent at an extraction lab, and I guess they started researching this at the beginning of COVID, and it's essentially it helps break down all the stuff inside of there, and I think like it reduces, if I'm reading it correctly, it reduces the waste of these batteries by about 50-60% is what I'm
Which is
seeing.
huge.
Right. And so, I guess it turns it into like a black powder. um the batteries are reborn. The powder contains some plastic and steel from the battery, which must be separated out, but there are also sought after minerals in this recycled stuff, such as lithium, nickel, cobalt, and graphite. These are prized ingredients with which lab workers here can make a new battery. So they're able to break it down and get a lot of these minerals that cost a lot of money to mine as well. So if and it doesn't say, I don't think it's been completely confirmed yet, but the fact that the BBC is reporting it means that there's at least some kind of basis.
Movement.
Yeah, so I think that if they can figure out a way to do that, I think you're going to see EVs like start to gain steam, because the biggest cost in an EV is the battery. And if all right, now we found ways to reuse a lot of the material.
And
Okay,
that might
well,
bring the cost of the battery down when it needs to
right,
be replaced.
right, make it affordable. Another transportation that they don't talk about that I'm a big proponent of, and I know sometimes it can be expensive, is hydrogen powered cars. Because when we boil it down, gasoline is like, it's a dying thing in terms of as a main fuel for transportation. There's plenty of it out there, but, you know, in areas where there's a lot of cars, metropolitan areas, things like that, the lung health of people is worse versus people who are in the country where there's not as much industrialization. So but I'm not sitting there using that as like a bag on gasoline, right? It's just something that is,
Right.
it's a fact, right? So it's just something that,
It's a
okay,
fossil fuel.
right. And, I don't know enough to say if fossil fuels are the biggest reason we're, in an not economic, ecological climate crisis, whatever you want to call it. But I think with hydrogen cars rather than electric, I think the byproduct, if I remember correctly, is water. But what I read is how they break it down is they use natural gas, and then they break it down into the liquid hydrogen, which they put into the car, which goes into the engine, and then it goes into the fuel cells, which powers the electric engines.
Correct.
So, but I believe it's Honda or Hyundai that's producing like an escape sized SUV in mass next year. I believe it's actually down in Tennessee or Kentucky out of a plant. Like it's going to be like a regularly produced car. Well, I think it's not that much cheaper or not that much more expensive per gallon if we kind of convert it to gasoline. It's a little bit more efficient than a gasoline engine, but you've already got existing pipelines right across the whole United States. You could, you could essentially find out a way to follow along those pipelines that because a lot of them are above ground, or you could, you know, next to them, and you could literally establish new pipelines and new distribution systems because it's not, it transfers, it's liquid, right? So we could find new ways to move that without having to completely reinvent society. If you need liquid hydrogen, boom, you convert some of the gas stations over. And people in America, we like our gas stations. We like pulling into a Bucky's or, up here, Speedway. And obviously, Bucky's is like 1,000 times the size of Speedway. But
Have
like
you been
that's
to a Bucky's yet?
no, I have not. I keep seeing it everywhere, and everybody keeps asking for it in Michigan, and there has yet to be one. I was looking online, right, and you know how much a Bucky's general manager makes? One
It
hundred
is
and fifty thousand a year.
it is insane. Even their cashiers are like 19 to 21, an hour. So we're going on vacation. We're both off next week. We're going on just to get away for a couple of days. We're going over to Pensacola because
Okay.
From us to Pensacola is only about 4 hours. Just right follow the coast along, and there's
Oh yeah.
there's some a couple of Bucky's over that way, and it's a given that we stop at Bucky's going and you stop coming home. Like they have like a huge beef jerky counter. The food is phenomenal in them.
Oh, I wish I could eat beef jerky right now. I'm in temporary dentures for I think for the next three months or so. Did I tell you that I got implants put in?
No, you didn't.
So, do you have any crowns in in your mouth?
Not yet.
So, I had crowns. I had really bad acid reflux for years. Probably from bad diet, whatever. Well, it had eroded my back teeth, and so like when I would cough, apparently it erode other parts of my teeth. Well, I'd gotten crowns put in the back, and the dentist was showing me my previous 3D scan from I think it was like 2 years ago versus this was back in January, and they were still deteriorating underneath. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, well, man, it's like $1,000 for a crown, and if you got to get these replaced every so many years, and then eventually that tooth's gonna have to come out because they ain't gonna be able to shave it down forever
Yeah,
to
there's
put a
only gonna be
crown
so
on.
much.
Right, and so I looked into. I already had a partial denture, that clicked into my other teeth. So I looked up snap-on dentures. So essentially, you go in, they remove your existing teeth, and they put these implants. I got 4 put in my upper jaw, 2 in my lower, and then they did some bone grafting to even whatever out, and give it support. Um, and that combined with what I had done a couple of years ago, I think that it comes out to about 17,000 or so. Um, and then you have to wait 3 to 4 months for it to heal, sometimes 5 months, because the bones got to heal around the implant that got drilled in it. And then you go back in. I think they call it like the reveal or whatever, and they put the metal like caps or whatever it is on those implants, and then you have to let that heal. And then I believe the next appointment after that is where they put your like permanent dentures in or whatever. Like it snaps in there in place, and you can take them out whenever you need to for cleaning, whatever you need to do. But it's essentially like with those, you can bite into corn on the cob if you want. You can eat an apple, things of that nature. That right now with like a regular denture, you can't do that.
Yeah, because you're
You
worried they're
bite
gonna
you.
come out.
Well, yeah, well you bite, and then on top of it, there's just not enough of a grit to them, right? To where you can bite into something that's hard. Everything has to be soft, and I got that stuff done. It had to be done over 2 weeks because they couldn't get like right below my nose completely numb where they wanted to put an implant. So it took 4 hours and they had to get that one done, plus removing the teeth. And he was like, hey, I can't legally give you any more shots there. It's illegal. I was like, oh, okay. He goes, you got to wait a week. So I came back, and then they did the bottom, and they put two down there. So grand total, it was like 8.5, 9 hours of surgery. It was only supposed to be three total, but I have a hard time getting numbed in that certain area of my mouth. Like even before a couple of years ago, it was a struggle. And but it'll be nice once it's done. I couldn't
Yeah,
fathom keep getting new crowns every 5 to 10 years and get my tooth shaved down. And I'm like, man, what a ripoff. And it's crazy. It was painful when they couldn't get that one completely numb. I could feel them like a little bit when they crank because they ratchet the last part of it in, and it's like you can hear that thing clicking, and you're like, oh
like they're almost like setting it with a torque wrench.
yeah, they do. It's like I think like a dental version of that.
Oh,
It
that just sounds painful.
it was, but like for a month, I was pretty much on mashed potatoes and soups and Jello. I lost like 40 something pounds. I was like, oh man, I'm like that's a little intense there. Um, but kind of getting back to some of the other stuff that just kind of came on my mind, I guess if you want to call it that. So we haven't really talked a super ton about these tariffs, a little bit, except for the Vietnam thing. Um, you know, down there, you guys obviously get a lot more imports from the South than we do up here. Like directly affecting you. You know what I mean? Like it's going to come to your shelf from Mexico a lot faster than it will mine.
Oh yeah, the
Um,
port of New Orleans. All of your coffee for the United States comes through the port of New Orleans. Any
I did not know that.
I didn't either till we moved down here. So any coffee comes through the port of New Orleans, and Folgers actually has a coffee roasting facility in New Orleans on the east side of New Orleans where they roast their coffee at and produce it. So they get the raw product in and then they roast it domestically.
Wow, I did not know that.
All of your Dole like products come in through the port of Gulfport, or is it Gulfport or Biloxi? I don't remember which one it is because Biloxi and Gulfport are right next door to each other.
Wow, that is something I did not know. Did not know
Chiquita,
that. Not one bit.
all your Chiquita bananas come
Mm-hmm.
in through Galveston, Texas.
Wow. I those. I mean, well, I don't live down there, so that's probably why I don't know. Um, that's crazy. McDonald's gets some of its French fries from Canada.
That don't surprise me at all. When I worked at the wholesale food company, um, you got like, well, okay, three major French fry suppliers. You got Simplot, Lamb Wesson, and McCain or Cane Foods.
Mm-hmm.
And they all had um, potato manufacturing facilities up in like Manitoba area. I think it was Manitoba, which is kind of like directly above Idaho. Um, and they would grow these potatoes the size of heads of cabbage up there in like this sandy soil, and because they got such a better yield out of them. So a
Wow.
lot of a lot of your potatoes, and your French fries, anyways, come out of Canada, depending on the company that is producing them.
Now that I guess I just wouldn't expect with Canada, like its climate being so cold, so much longer than ours down in Michigan, even that it would be a place for potatoes to thrive.
Yeah, you would think that, but just talking to some of the people that used to transport them, they said it's ideal because they can grow them quickly and the size that they grow them, and then they just manufacture them and put them into cold storage, so they need to be shipped.
Wow. So here's a thing. We're talking about the tariffs and things of that nature. Where's it at? It's from the articles from March 25th, and it is crazy. Americans are solidly behind Trump and Doge. It's an opinion piece. 76 poll respondents approved of Trump's speech to Congress. 74% affirmed it was presidential. 68% agreed with his characterization of America's crisis. 77% of respondents backed the president's immigration and border policies. Wow, 77 of Americans supported the mission of the Department of Doge. Yeah, I mean, I can get behind that. I definitely agree with some of the senators though, where maybe Elon Musk shouldn't have access to certain private information of people. I
I
don't think anybody.
agree because at the end of the day, he's just a
He's a
ordinary
human.
citizen.
Yeah, so I can definitely agree with people there. That is definitely something that he should not have access to, and I feel that was definitely a misstep by the president of not either not being in control of that or not being aware of that. I'm not sure which one. I don't know how that process went for them. Um,
I read something. I don't remember where I read it, and I didn't look at the source or what, but it it said what Elon and Doge are saying that they're cutting all this money from the budget and all this unnecessary spending, but there's been like no proof of it, and there's been no proof of money saved. So they said till they start seeing that, it's just all hearsay.
oh yeah, yeah, no, no, for sure. I mean, hearsay is always dangerous. I mean, especially like hearsay will have people believing cats and dogs are getting eaten in Ohio on a mass level.
Absolutely.
Do I have any doubt that probably happened at some point? Yeah, but I don't think it was the way it was made up at the campaign trail. Like people were lining up down the street to snatch people's cats and dogs. They,
Yeah.
they're sitting there, they're going to come and get your cats and dogs. Like, come on, man. Like, there's enough things going on in this country. I feel like Trump nor Democrats, I don't feel like you really need to fear monger for people to realize that certain things aren't going their way.
Oh, absolutely,
all
absolutely, hundred
all the
percent.
it just creates division, and that's what they want is they want the division, and it's just like how do we get everybody to stop feeding into it. I know I've sent you a couple of his videos, but Tom McDonald, I truly feel Tom McDonald was a huge impact on Donald Trump getting elected. um he's a big Trump supporter. He's conservative, but he doesn't really call himself Republican. He's from Canada. He's that rapper. I sent you a couple, I think, of his songs or videos,
Yeah,
and
yeah, you did.
he he's very patriotic. He lives in, I believe, LA. He's a completely independent artist. He does not have a record label. He doesn't have like any like major distribution thing. I think he has a friend, I should say, has like a warehouse or something of that nature, and he does like the mailing and stuff through him. But he doesn't have any kind of oversight of his. There's nobody who says, "Hey, you shouldn't say this. Hey, you shouldn't do that." And I think he's worth like $50 million or something like that, and he's never been signed to a major record label. They've offered him since he's become popular, but
Right.
he never has. Do you know who Ben Shapiro is?
Yeah.
He actually did a song with Ben Shapiro, or Ben Shapiro did one with him, and Ben Shapiro actually rapped in it. Whereas like 10 years ago, Ben Shapiro was like, rap is terrible, and but Tom McDonald is kind of, I feel like he's bridging that old style conservative gap with young conservatives, because young conservatives, their world's a lot different than their grandpa's.
Oh,
It's vastly different. Those two conservatives are not going to view the world the same way.
the world's completely different than it was just saying COVID.
Oh gosh, before, life was a whole lot easier before COVID, I can tell you that. It
A
was
lot of things
a
that
lot more streamlined.
especially like logistics wise, because for the longest time you heard, oh well, it's COVID related. It can't get that because it's COVID related. Like I feel like a lot of companies use COVID as a excuse for products and poor logistics and things like that.
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I mean, it's we're still in my industry. We're still, I won't say like dealing with, because that's not the bad way. That's not the right way to put it. We still tackle like some of the work. I call it work habits, whatever you want to label it as, from COVID. And it's a different kind of worker. Whereas before, you could be like, Hey, Johnny, I need you to do ABC, please. Okay, politely, not rude. Trying
Right.
to be like, all right, it's my job. I'm going to do it. Well, post COVID, when you talk to an employee, they want to know the who, what, when, where, why, and what's the purpose of them doing that. And I get it. It's just it's been an adjustment because my whole career it's just told you your job, you try to do your job, and you go on from there. Whereas now, as people want to know the who, what, why, where, why is it red, why is it blue, and I think that it's difficult. It was difficult for me, and it's difficult for companies in general because in a company's mind, well, I'm giving you money, and today's workforce is like, I would rather not have money than do something that I really hate doing.
Yeah, that boggles my mind. That they're like that. I can't wrap my head around that. They have very poor work ethic.
While they do have a poor work ethic, I don't want to say like be sympathetic. I'm being sympathetic, but to maybe like I guess play devil's advocate on it, right? How many times through our lifetime have we heard companies are making 30% increase in profit, but your wage increase was 2%?
All the time.
Right. So I think that a lot corporate America, unfortunately, some of them, not all of them, because there's a lot of companies out there who do treat their people very well. The one that I work for, they treat me very well.
And I
Um,
will, as long as I've known you and you work there, you have always had positive things to say about them. So
yeah,
I will say that that's always been consistent with how they take care of you and the whole crew.
Yeah, and there's times where I disagree with my bosses, and there's been times, obviously, where I've looked for other employment, that, and it happens, right? And it's just, but that's just, and I'm pretty sure there's times where they look at me and they're like, "Man, we got to find somebody to replace this guy."
Right. It's
All
just
employers think that, it's just how it is, and it's usually when you're frustrated, right? But when you sit down, take a deep breath, sleep on it, whatever you want to do, the next day you're like, maybe I was overreacting a little bit.
yeah. You're like, you know what? I was gonna say that, but I'm not gonna say it. I'm just gonna let it go.
Yeah, oh yeah, and it's rough too. But I feel like a lot of these companies, like they don't. It's weird because I'm very pro capitalist, right, and I'm pro business. But at the same time, I feel like these companies should not do more. Ooh, just because they're a human being. No, but first do more because investing in your people not only benefits you as an employer, but it benefits your customers too. Because you get more employees willing to take a risk to get to move forward faster, to do those things where they're going, okay, I feel appreciated. Now, these days, I will say that people really do seem to be impressed by small gifts, like, oh, hey, it's my birthday and I got like a recognition thing in a bag of small gifts. People seem to really appreciate that these days.
They
Where,
really do, and I'll say I'm one for like I don't need you to pat me on the back and tell me I do a good job every day, but I think every once in a while people they like to feel appreciated, like hey like we really appreciate you going above and beyond for us, and just thank you. I think that goes a long way.
yeah, no, for sure it does. No, no, 1,000% agree. Okay, well, we're gonna wrap this up.
All right, brother, it
Oh,
was good.
okay.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.